all of the biggest bands in the world. Started out like this.
You got to get in the van if you want to make it in this business.
I have long been a fan of documentaries, music, and traveling. So there's a perfect documentary for me that finds a way to marry all three with a few other things as well. The documentary is called What Drives Us, and it explores the power of music, musicians, the road, the community, and the family of those who are involved in music. Today, we get a chance to talk to filmmaker, editor, and story maker extraordinaire, Dean Gonzalez, about his work on the film, What Drives Us. Noel Manning II here. Welcome to Open Dialogue, where we talk with filmmakers, the ones who make it happen. Very happy to have Dean Gonzalez with us. Dean, so good to have you talking about editing, talking about music, talking about a new film called What Drives Us. So good to see you, man.
Pleasure. Thank you so much for having me, man.
So we always like to get background on our filmmakers before we dive into particular projects. So I'd love to hear how you got into this love of filmmaking, and you've done feature film, documentaries, music videos, commercials, pretty much. So I don't think there's anything you haven't touched as it relates to editing. So give us some background on your love of music, and then let's dive into your love of editing.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up in Chicago, and one of my best friends is a musician, and so I grew up with him, and that kind of started my love affair with music. And then I started playing music. I played drums, was never good enough, but played in some bands, and just really fell in love with music, and then met more and more bands, and then really got headstrong into being at all the shows. I would roadie for my friends.
Yeah.
And I had some friends that actually did really well as well. Like I have this band, the Steepwater Band. They're from Chicago, and they would tour all over the world. So I got to go to them and roadie for them in Spain. And
wow.
Had another friend that opened for AC/DC. So yeah, I just love music. And then for editing, it really came about, I never knew what I wanted to do as a kid.
Right.
I drew, I did poetry, I did, music and stuff. And then I went to school at Columbia in Chicago.
Right.
And started, I wanted to make movies. I also was doing special effects makeup when I was a kid. I love horror films. And so
Rick Baker may be a name that you're familiar with.
Absolutely. Love Big Bear. I actually met Tony Gardner the other day.
Wow.
At Dave's studio.
Yeah.
And I was just like, I didn't know him by face, but he was just like, hey, I'm Tony, blah, blah. We started talking, and then he said his last name, and I was like, wait. And then he's like, yeah, I did some movies, like Chucky, and I did the Alien Queen. I was like, what?
Yeah.
So he was just like, I was just like, oh my God, I love you. But yeah, I just didn't, I wanted to do all kinds of things, just something in the arts, right? And went to film school, and I kind of, there I kind of met people that were seemed a little snooty to me. Like everybody wanted to be I'm going to be the next Spielberg and this and that. And
right.
So I didn't really like that. And so I moved to the television department.
Okay.
And I put my way through school. So I worked 3-4 jobs. Okay. So I worked I was a TA. I worked in the film cage, and you know what I mean? I was a bar waiter and all that stuff. And so by doing that, our school actually had, in the Midwest, they were one of the first Avid school that had Avid. And so I got to work with the Avids.
Wow.
And I really fell in love with it.
Wow. So did you do any straight cuts editing before the Avid, or are you familiar with? No. So you nonlinear was you from the beginning?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I'd done it in film school where you had to use the little moviolas and things like that. But I really I didn't think about it as a career. Yeah. I was just like, yeah, whatever, cool. It's part of the film course. And then I left school and I moved to Los Angeles. And my old roommate in Chicago was an editor at a post house in Chicago called Avenue Edit. And they had just opened up an editing shop in Santa Monica.
Okay.
And so I was like, dude, get me a job, at least an interview, you know? And he did.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a car, but I rode my bike from Hollywood to Santa Monica, and I got the job. And I was an assistant there and worked my way up to editor. And then really it started, like, I loved doing that. I mean, that was my love of, like, I just did whatever anybody wanted me to do. I didn't care. And then because of my love of music and all that stuff, I got a chance to do some music videos.
Yeah.
You know, they were low budget and stuff, but then I started getting some recognition from it.
Right.
And I remember I did a video for this band called And You Will Know Us by the Trail of the Dead.
Okay.
And this director, Mark Pellington, reached out and was like, man, I really like your work, you know? And I was like, holy crap, like Mark Pellington is amazing. And and I just started getting more and more opportunities. And then I moved on to a music video house and started, and then I feel very blessed and fortunate. I've been able to work with amazing people like Nas and Aerosmith and Slayer, and you know what I mean. It's like I did a lot of stuff with country, you know, because you get pigeonholed a lot of times. So
right.
I was the rock guy for a while, then I became the country guy for a while. I even worked with Rascal Flatts. I did a movie with them.
There you go.
Moved down to Nashville for like 3 months on it. And I love it. It's I think with editing, the one thing that I really love is, as a director, I mean, in any career, I think you can get pigeonholed, but as a director, I feel like you're known for one thing, really. And as an editor, I love being able to jump around on all different things, like you said. You know, I mean, I've worked on Jimmy Kimmel Live. I've done horror films. I've done, you know, documentaries. I did a trans movie called They, premiered at Cannes, and I've had so many crazy experiences. I had one band, 30 Seconds to Mars, took me on 2 tours, one in America, one in Europe. And so it's like, I try to really live to the best of my life. You know what I mean? Like, I try to take advantage of every moment that I can. And, you know, it's hard. My wife has been an amazing supporter, where we've been apart from each other for 7 months sometimes. And even on What Drives Us, I was living in Chicago, and I came out here and stayed out here for many, like probably 4 months before I came back home during COVID, worked on the movie from there. And then now we've officially moved back to Los Angeles. But it can be hard, but it's, you know, I think anything that's worth doing can be difficult at times.
Absolutely. Was there a moment when you started that you realized not only it was something you wanted to do, but it was something that you were pretty good at? Do you remember what that moment was, or what that project was?
You know, man, that's a good question. I mean, I feel like music video, you know, it's strange. In music videos, you kind of get beat down a lot, because it's really up to, there's so many people involved, and you have a very limited time. So you can get 9 hours of footage, and they're like, we need a cut in 3 days. And they'll have a like, you know, the whole treatment of the video, but they're like, oh, I didn't actually shoot page 2, so figure it out. And you're like, okay. Sometimes they'll love it, and then sometimes they'll be like, what did you do? You know, and you're like, well, I tried my best. I don't know. And so it was ups and downs, I feel. So the film that I think the one that I was really proud, I've been wanting to get into movies for a long time. I have a great friend. His name is Dan Mervish. I don't know if you know him, but he is one of the co-founders of the Slam Dance Film Festival. And he had directed this film called Between Us. It's Taye Diggs, David Harbour, you know, a couple other actors. And he asked me if I wanted to do it. We had done some work together, just some side projects that were fun. And he gave me my first shot. And it was based on a Broadway play that David Harbour had been in New York. And so it was a ton of dialogue. I mean, I think there was one scene that was 20 pages of dialogue.
Wow.
And I was like, yes, I haven't done anything like that. And I love to stretch myself and challenge myself.
Yes.
And that he gave me the shot. And even there was even some people that fought against having me on board on that film. Wow. And he fought them and was like, nope, this is my editor. Take it or leave it.
Yeah.
I was and that really like, I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, you know, because after watching it, I was like, I really like it. And then when we premiered it at the Slam Dance Film Festival, I had people coming up to me and being like, wow, great editing job. And I was like, wait, what? Wow. And people asked my autograph. I'm like, I'm the editor. Like, are you sure? Like, and there was one gentleman that he was a music composer guy, and he was just like, dude, you did such a great job with the music and everything. And that really made me feel great. And because I don't hear that for commercials or music videos, you know? You don't get those kind of like compliments. Right. So that was really special. Yeah. To do that movie as my first film with some great, really good actors, you know? Yeah.
Well, you know, just before we went on the air, we were talking about kind of the puzzle maker and the puzzle piece creator that pulls everything together. That's the editor, because there's so many different elements of things that have to click, that have to work, and that have to go right for you. And there's so many things to pull from. And when I was looking at what drives us, I mean, just blown away by the massive amounts of archive footage, stills, you know, film, concert clips, interviews. I mean, it just kind of goes on and on and on. And you got so much on the shelf. So it's like, oh my gosh, you know what? So I was just blown away by the fluidity of how this story unfolded. And it was the first 30 minutes right off the bat, incredibly captivating. And the narrative, honestly, is fluid. And that is a challenging thing to do. You know, everything's got to work well for that to happen. I mean, you've got to have the story first, the story to pull from, but you also have a director and somebody pulling the script together. It's a collaborative medium, any type of filmmaking, but documentary filmmaking of this magnitude, even more so. So talk about the process that you went through to make that feature-length final cut. I mean, man, where do you start? Where do you start on something like this?
Well, I always start with the interviews. When it comes to something like this, that is your bread and butter. What I always do is I watch, you know, I mean, especially with the people that are in this movie. I mean, my Lord, I mean, that's the benefit of working with Dave Grohl is his roster of friends. You know, it's like, oh, let me call up The Edge and let me call up Flea. And you're just like, good.
Is Ringo available? Yeah, let's get Ringo over here, you know?
Yeah, that was the very first interview. Was
really?
Ringo.
Wow.
And funny enough, that was only about 8 minutes of footage.
Wow.
Because he was interviewing him for something else. And he was just like, hey, you know, would you do this? And he was like, absolutely. And Ringo he's been interviewed, you know, a million times. So he knows exactly what you want from him. And he gave such amazing stuff. But I always start with the interviews. And so, like, you know, you take somebody like Ringo, or you take somebody like Brian Johnson, Flea, whoever, and I made selects of everything I loved. And I always like put in little markers with the questions and the, you know, a little answer kind of thing as well. So once I do all that, then I broke it down into acts. So I had a first, second, and third act. And so kind of, and I'm sure, you know, everyone has seen this, but, you know, you kind of put up, you know, little boards and you like try to figure out storylines and stuff.
Right.
And, so we kind of did that, but in my actual project, I did this whole film in DaVinci, Resolve Edit, and, which was great. It was my first feature ever working with that, and I had taught myself DaVinci the summer before.
All right.
And so it was just kind of perfect timing that they were like, you need to cut it on this because Black Magic was involved, and they were amazing to work with, and we were working with all raw footage. So I was working on 6 and 4K raw.
Wow. Wow.
And it wasn't, there was no steppiness to it, which
Yeah.
never happens. You always have to transcode footage
Right.
to a smaller size, and I didn't need to with this. And so that really helped with moving forward, because we had a few interviews that they did after I came on. They still did like Flea, actually, Charlie from Preservation Hall,
Yeah.
a few other, Brian Johnson. But so then I make my selects of acts. And so I built out stories of, like, when I was a kid, family was my family musical. I had all these little pods, I would call them. And I just start kind of like piecing things together. And actually at the beginning of this project, was before COVID. And so the initial idea was that, because, David got his van back, his original van, and the Foos toured in like 92. And so his idea was that originally, that last year was the 25th anniversary for the Foos, and they were going to be, this year, and they were going to do their original tour dates, so far as in the towns that they played. They were going to play different, they're going to play stadiums now, not the small places, and they were going to take the band with them. And we were going to show a 10-minute teaser kind of thing before every concert. They would come out in the van, play for 3 hours, and they'd leave in the van.
Yeah.
We were working on that for like the first couple months. So that was my initial job, was to get that together.
Yeah.
Then management was like, hey, we need to get this movie going. We need to make this happen. So we were like, okay, we're going to start cranking on that. And then COVID hit.
Yeah.
And that changed everything. But for me, it was the best thing that could have happened, because that really gave me time to really flush out the story.
Right.
So weirdly enough, because Dave has a studio in Northridge that I worked out of. And once COVID hit, and it's great because it's private. It's his own private place, gated, building. I basically lived there by myself for like 3 months.
Wow.
And I would just edit every day from like 9 to 10 or 12 at night.
Wow.
And it was great because I could play it as loud as I want and nobody would bother me, get upset how loud I was playing.
Yeah.
With a rock concert thing, you always want to play loud. So
that's right, man.
Yeah. So it was, it really helped, giving it time to really flesh out the story. Because as you can imagine, there's so much gold that they gave.
Yeah.
But I also, you talk about the archival stuff, all the artists gave us great photos and things like that, but a lot of stuff I went and found myself.
Wow.
I actually go on YouTube, and I've always been used to doing it myself. And so I would go on YouTube, and like Annie Clark for St. Vincent, she had posted these tour diaries on YouTube. And so I had asked Dave, I said, hey, can you reach out to her and see if we can use these?
Yeah.
Said, absolutely.
Yeah, and so you incorporated that. You incorporated that within the edits too. You would see the actual YouTube piece, and then you would go to the actual footage as well.
Yeah, because I think that is an important part of our lives now, right? I mean, it's social media and all, YouTube. I mean, it's what, as Starcrawler in the film, they talk about it, where it's like we use it to look at bands and to get suggestions. And so it was great because I could, because a lot of times with research, someone asked me, they're like, well, like, how did you utilize them? And I'm like, well, I find it weird to be like, hey, can you give me something on DH Peligro? I don't know what it's going to be, but like, is there any footage you can find? Like, I have to kind of know what I'm looking for.
Right.
And I don't really know until I kind of like piece things together. Like you said, it's like a puzzle. And so there's just little moments that maybe someone says, it's like, oh, we did this show. There was a moment that's actually not in the movie. Brian Johnson was talking about, they were playing a song in like, God, I want to say it was like Scotland or something. And he talked about how he's like, the rain was coming down and lightning and this huge storm came in. And I found the footage. There was only one clip online, and this dude filmed it, and you saw the storm come in.
Wow.
And rain and, and then it went away.
Yeah.
We had that in the cut for a while, but it just ultimately story-wise, we needed to
Yeah.
take things. You got to take the babies out every once in a while.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so I love that kind of stuff. It's a treasure, find for me. It's like I just go on those little hunts for little nuggets here and there, and it's amazing sometimes what you can find nowadays.
Yeah. There are some editors that do not get a chance to be as part of the storytelling elements. They may be presented with the script. Someone else has already said, okay, here's that narrative that I want. And it's wonderful to hear you talking about your in-depth involvement here in helping to craft the narrative for what we ultimately see in this. And I've been involved in documentaries before where you go out and you might have an idea, okay, here's the story I want to tell. And then you shoot the interviews and you get the B-roll, you get everything. And then once you start transcribing, you realize, okay, yeah, maybe that's part of the story, but it's probably about this part of the story. And the story that's unfolding with these interviews is much, much more.
Yeah. Yeah. I always believe in the organic process.
Yes.
The film will lead you in the direction that it wants to go.
Yeah.
And fortunately, working with someone like Dave, that was exactly how he felt. It was, he had this idea of doing a documentary about bands starting in bands and like getting out on the road. And it kind of grew into this a bigger picture of what makes someone give up everything to follow their dreams. What is it that drives you?
Yes.
Because there is no guarantee that it'll ever pay out. Like Dave says, what is it?
Yeah.
And we really worked hard at trying to make that come across. And because one thing me and Dave talked about a lot was wanting to inspire kids to get out there and with social media and like instant fame, as you would call it, or fake fame. And, you need to put in the miles. You can't have a band that entertains 80,000 people and they've never done it. You got to go through all the heartache and all the pain and then to see what really draws in a crowd.
Yeah.
That's what makes you the entertainer that the Foos have become, U2 has become, Metallica. You need those moments. You need those starving moments where you're eating bologna, in the back of your van.
Or your dad makes pizza for you and you're eating pizza as you're driving down the road. As we saw with one of the bands as well. The dad's the bus driver,
Oh yeah, Radkey, those kids are amazing. The father, I love that about him, that he quit his job.
Yes.
To be with his sons and just travel around the world. That's what more can you ask for, And then I think that is, again, that's part of the story that we want to get across, is that kids, from a very small town, they didn't, people thought they were a rap group because they were black kids. And it's like, they didn't even listen to the music.
Yeah.
They did it though. They stuck to it. They kept going. And they're killing it. And I actually saw them in Chicago before this project had ever come up.
Wow.
Saw them play in Chicago and I was blown away, and I bought their record.
Yeah.
I was like, these kids are amazing. And so it was so exciting when they told me like the artist, and they were like, oh, we got this young band Radkey. And I'm like, oh, I know them. I'm like,
those guys.
Yeah, they were, I didn't meet them, but I was just like, they're incredible. Like great live show. And like, so it's beautiful to see the legends in the film along with the young bands like Radkey and Starcrawler,
Yeah, I love the way the story was told, where you, like you said, you've got this, how do you get started and what drives you physically? What's that automobile? What does it look like? What's that van look like? Is it a, econo van? What does it look like? And then the way it's bookend at the end, you're seeing the stadium concerts and you're seeing, okay, here's what it's about. It's about connections. It's about community. And sure, you've got the family of the band, but there's also the family of those who want to engage in your music and those who want to listen to the words that you're writing and hearing the music that you're playing and being a part of that experience. And all of that comes through in this. And kudos, man. I'm just amazed at what you were able to pull together with this.
Oh, thank you. I think what really, Dave allowed me to truly, he was like a kid in a candy store. He was always just so excited, and he'd come in and be like, oh man, that's rad. This is great. And he would always allow me to stretch myself and, go different directions and, understanding certain things that we wanted to get across. And I also feel like, filmmaking is that kind of journey as well. Like without the fans of, I'm friends with Edgar Wright, and I know a few other people, and it's like, those guys started, everyone has to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And, it may take you a long time to get there. You may get instant fame, who knows? But like, it's a journey and it's experience that makes you who you are. And I think that's what I really try to draw from is that life experience of, you got to put in the miles, you got to put in that determination. And because I've seen it I have so many friends that are so talented, and and some people make it, some don't. And, but you'll find your way. If you're determined, you will find your way.
Yeah. And take advantage of the opportunities. Going back to what you said earlier in the interview, is that when these chances come along, when these doors are open, put your foot in there and, take a peek to see if it's something that you want to explore more. And sure, there are going to be things that will come along that you might pass on, and then somebody else takes it and takes it in a direction that you never would have foreseen. But when those opportunities come along, think about them, think about them. Don't just, say no, or don't jump at everything.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, this was the first project I did with this group, the Therapy. Therapy Studios is, has worked with Dave. They did, Sonic Highways, they did Sound City. And so I had gotten in touch with the executive producer the year before in the summer.
Okay.
I was in LA doing a skateboard film, and I reached out to him because they're all of the editors on his roster are all friends of mine, and I've known about them for years. We've known each other for years. We just never made anything work. And I reached out to him, and I was like, hey man, I'm like, I love you, your company, for what you guys do. Right. And I would love to be represented by you. I'd become freelance once again. I worked for a lot of different shops over the years.
Right. Right.
One of the companies that I worked for many years had closed their doors. And so I was available, and he was like, absolutely, let's do it. And this was the first job that we have done together. He called me up and was like, hey, I have a movie. It would be with Dave Grohl, and can you come out to LA for 3 to 6 months? Yes. It wasn't exactly easy because I had to leave my wife.
Yeah.
And I have dogs, and, and I have, things, I have a house to take care of. And like you said, it's like, you got to just think about it, but then it's like, go for it, man. Yeah. It's like, and I'm so happy I did. And it's been a dream come true. It truly has. It's life-changing, and especially to work with this group of people, Dave and the Foos, and like, Therapy and Black Magic, like all those guys were so great. And to be able to help, with Black Magic, with their Resolve Edit Studio, I've actually was helping them create changes for Studio 17, and their team would come in and ask me questions of like, how can we make things better? And it was amazing to be able to do, that confidence in me to be like, well, if you can do this, this would be fantastic. Right. And they're like, we'll make it happen.
Wow.
So it was an incredible journey to be able to do with them. And Dave, he allows you to do that. He truly,
that's amazing.
He's a busy guy. He's always doing something.
Yeah. I found with every project, no matter what it is, whether it's an interview that you're a part of, or film clips that you find, or those treasures that you don't expect, you can learn something from every single project. And maybe it's a lesson, or maybe it's just a nugget that you're going to take with you going forward. What do you think is the most valuable nugget or lesson that you learned from working on What Drives Us?
You know, there's a couple things I would say. Number one would be just confidence.
Okay.
You know, to have someone that truly let me, Dave would truly just be like, dude, just keep doing what you're doing. It's incredible.
I love it. I love
And
it.
that is just such a beauty, you
Yeah.
know, as you know, with editing, sometimes, you know, sometimes they tell you what to do.
Right,
and,
right.
You know, and I've always been one to be like, look, I'm not a button pusher. I have to be creative in it. But like, sometimes, you know, you always have to make some
Yep.
choices, you know, and with this, man, I really learned to really trust my instincts. One of the other things, one of the incredible producers on the job was Mark Monroe, who's an incredible, I don't know if you know him or not, but an incredible writer, and he's done some amazing work. I mean, he just did like The Dissident, and, you know, the Bee Gees doc and the band. I mean, he's always working. And one of the things that he had told me was like, he's like, man, he's like, think of stock footage as your friend. If we don't have it, go find it.
Yeah.
You know, and the funny thing is a lot of the other projects I've worked on in my past don't have a great budget.
Right.
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 You don't have that opportunity sometimes.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't necessarily do that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And he was like, if we don't have it, find it.
Yeah.
All right, that's cool. Like I've always been trying to, my brain has always been trying to like, okay, what's the cheapest thing I can do? And like, I gotta find this. And so there was so many great, you know, people to learn from.
Yeah.
You know, and I think that's also a key factor, is to don't always, you know, think of it as just your project or whatever, you know, it really does take a team.
Yeah. It's collaborative.
Yeah. And I love that. I mean, like one of the great people on our team was girl Shalonen. She was part of our research group and stuff. And I've told this story a few times now, but D.H. Playgrow in the film, there's a really emotional part, which I'm sure, you know, you remember. And I had reached out to her and I had said, this is gonna be a weird question. And I go, but I need a picture of D.H. fucked up. And she was like, okay. And I'm like, I know he's sober now, whatever. I go, but does he have any photos of himself when he's just really in the depths of his addiction?
Yeah.
And she sent me the picture. She reached out to me. He gave me the picture of him naked, you know, that we see in the film. And to me, that tells that story.
Yeah.
And then he was like, you know what? And he looked back and he found footage of him that we see of him like messed drunk at the show, and then Red Hot Chili Pepper stuff. He hadn't looked for that kind of stuff necessarily before. He just gave us a box of amazing photos.
Right.
But then he really was like, oh, now I have this and this. And that's again how docs change, you know.
Yes.
All of a sudden, then it's like, ooh, now I didn't have that Red Hot Chili Pepper footage of him until the end.
Right. Wow.
That is such a huge moment of him with that. And we had a photo, but like you actually see the camaraderie between them all. Yeah. And you can see some of those things of how his addiction was really had just got a grip on him. And those are like the gold nuggets that you're just like, or like the picture of Flea when he's a little kid and his hair.
Yes.
My Lord, that was the greatest picture of all time.
And you see the face and you still know it's Flea, you know?
Yeah. And I didn't, you know, and I learned so many things on it. Like, I didn't know U2 was, you know, inspired by the Ramones. Like, I never would have guessed that. That was the coolest thing ever.
Yeah.
The first song they played was a Peter Frampton song.
Exactly. Like, I was like, oh, I would love to hear that version of that song, you know?
Incredible. Imagine being in that high school watching that happen. You're like, I saw the first performance of U2. It's incredible. I love those kind of moments, you know? And again, that's what we really want, is to try to, you know, I'm hoping with, you know, with COVID, like I always believe with, you know, horrible things that happen in the world, that art and music and films will come out of that. Yeah. And weirdly enough, I mean, this wasn't planned, but I just feel like, God, this movie coming out when first time in history where bands weren't able to tour.
Right.
And we're doing a movie about touring.
Yeah. Yeah. And now we're starting to think about that happening again, where we're going to be able to tour and see these concerts live. And I think it's a wonderful doc for that. It's for those who are lovers of music, those who are music historians, those who just love documentaries, those who just love to see bios, because you get biography chunks of so many of these bands as well, and you're really getting a sense of who they are, how they became, but also who they still are becoming. And I love that. And again, that goes to what drives us. And if you think about those words, what drives us, it's continuous. It's not what drove us, but what drives us. And this doc really does that. It tells the story of the continuation of that journey of the musicians, that community, that family, and also that connection to the audience. So, man, Dean, thanks for bringing this to life, man.
Oh, it's my pleasure. I mean, it's one of my, there's two parts that I just absolutely love in that idea of where Exene from the band X, where she's like, we still touring 40 years later. And she's like, now we have two bands, and it's like, it's so touching and so great, because I knowing musicians and to me, that is a feat in itself to stay together that long. And the Foos, like the ending, hopefully this comes out after, I don't want to do any spoilers, but the ending song with Foos, I really wanted to show them during the different eras, to show where they came from,
right,
and where they're at. They're playing little, I mean, they were always famous because of Dave's fame, but like they played small places, and they played, and then but they always had that same drive, that same energy, same passion, and the love of the fans.
Yeah. The journey continues. The journey continues.
Right. And that I felt was, Dave kept saying, to me, he was like, I really want this big kind of ending, whatever. And I was actually afraid. I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to put the Foos at the ending, because he might find, because you have to be careful of he doesn't want to come across as, like, look at me, whatever. And I was afraid to show him that. But I thought it was an emotional ending and to add everybody else in there to help, bring it on. Luckily, he loved it. And he was just like, absolutely, man. He's like, I think you nailed it, and he was so happy. And then I did this little ending homage to The Hangover.
Yes.
Remember the movie?
Yeah.
So it was amazing to me that like all those photos at the end.
Yeah.
And so I tried to do that with the bands, like just like pictures of all these crazy bands, like Fu Manchu, like flipping up the camera, and like I was just like, God, we had so many amazing pictures that I had left over. I was like, what do we do with all this?
Yeah.
And I was like, I got it. And I started together, and I was like, this is so fun.
It worked.
Oh, good.
It really worked, man. Yeah.
It's hard because you, especially for myself, I'm sure, as you know, as an editor, it's like you become so close to a project.
Yes. Yeah.
It's hard to see if someone else will enjoy it.
Yeah.
And I could have probably worked on this thing for another year, I would have still tweaked, and producers were like, pencils down, man. You gotta stop. They're like, it's really good. Like, just you're okay. And I'm like, but I could maybe do one more. Hold on. It's
there's always more. There's always more that you want to do. Always. But I'm just truly touched that other people like yourselves enjoy it, because that's who it's for. Yeah.
It's really for. It's a love letter to musicians and fans of music and art and love. Film. It's like we really tried. I really put 180% into this thing. Like whatever I could do to keep pushing and try to make it great, and to find those crazy to get the picture of the original Whiplash lyrics on a piece of paper from Mars. Like, you're just like, what? It was just like, that is so cool. So it was a pleasure for me to go through all that stuff. It's fun. It takes a lot. It's long. But but
Yeah.
that's me. That's what I love to do.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Well, Dean Gonzalez, editor for the documentary What Drives Us, check it out if you get a chance. I think you will appreciate so many different aspects of it. Dean, editor and storyteller extraordinaire, any final thoughts or comments you want to share with our audience?
Get out there, get on the road, enjoy life. That's it.
That's it. That's it. Enjoy the journey. Thanks, Dean.
Yeah.
Appreciate you, man. So
Thank
much.
you.
For those tuning in, we appreciate your time as well. We know it's valuable. And for anyone that wants to take the time to listen to us talk about various aspects of filmmaking, we do appreciate you. So until next time, I'm Noel Manning II for Open Dialogue. That's a wrap.